Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a revisit of an episode from almost 3 years ago about chores and raising helpful kids. And I've been getting so many questions about this that I thought that it would be good to revisit this issue. And I also wanted to give you a little update of where my family is at with our helpful children, because it has been almost 3 years. When I first recorded this, I still had 2 kids at home who were 14 and 17. They are still at home and they are almost 17 and almost 20. My almost 20-year-old finally found an apartment and is going to be moving out. The rents where we live are so expensive and he finally found something affordable. But I have to say it's super bittersweet for me as I'm gonna miss him and miss his help, which is what I'm just about to talk about. And these are some really special success stories to me that I'm going to share. I hope I don't sound like I'm bragging, but honestly, this is really, as I say in the intro, it's not that I'm special or my kids are special, but they were raised with peaceful parenting. And I really believe that this is what happens when your kids are raised with peaceful parenting. As I explained in this episode, my kids didn't really do that much when they were little. And as they got older and we really practiced what I'm going to be explaining to you in the episode, they became more and more helpful. I share some examples from when they were 14 and 17 in the beginning of the episode. And now I just want to share a couple of stories that have happened in the past few weeks that I think are really illustrative of the fact that when you do model graciousness, which is something that I'm going to explain, but it's basically when you are the person that you want your child to be, when you do model graciousness, you do end up raising really thoughtful and helpful and gracious, compassionate kids. The other day, we were out of town. My husband, my daughter, and I were out of town, and a girlfriend of mine wanted to borrow my home office, and it was like the day before we were coming back, so she was at my house. And, I had an assumption that my son would have the house relatively clean when we came home, but we hadn't talked about it. And my girlfriend texted me and said, "Your son has been vacuuming and cleaning all day while I've been here, and you should be really proud." And I was proud, but I also know that because he was raised with this idea of being gracious and taking responsibility, I wasn't super surprised. I was a little surprised that he had cleaned the house so well without us asking, but I was really pleased. And the same kid was at work last week, and I wasn't sure where his job site was, so I asked him if he was going to be anywhere near my favorite takeout place. Shout out to Tropical Joe's in the Gerrard Square Mall for anyone who knows Toronto. It is the most amazing takeout. And he said no, he wasn't going to be near there, but he didn't mind going and getting it for me, which made him get home about an hour later than he needed to. I was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And he said, "Mom, I told you I don't mind. I'll go and get it for you." It made me feel really good that he was being so kind and thoughtful and gracious. And I thought back and, he was raised with years and years of doing things for our kids, even if they could do it for themselves, and really having model graciousness be a family value that we had. One more story that I'll share is my daughter, who's about to turn 17. I came home the other day. I actually had been out doing some errands and getting some groceries, and I came home and she had cleaned up the whole kitchen without me asking her to. And that's not, that it's not an everyday occurrence, but it's not super unusual. So these are the things that are going to happen when you do raise your kids with peaceful parenting and you do instill the sense of being a helpful person rather than forcing them to do chores. Let's dive in and really hear about what we recommend as peaceful parenting coaches, how you approach chores in your family, and how you raise helpful kids. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. That's the way that we can reach more people and introduce more people to peaceful parenting and actually what peaceful parenting really is rather than how it's getting sort of twisted on social media. I noticed a bit of a backlash starting of people who don't really understand peaceful parenting. And there's going to be more on that in the coming weeks. I'm planning some content around looking at the myths of peaceful parenting that I'm just seeing all over the place. So let's learn about raising helpful kids. No matter how old they are, it's never too late to start. Today, we are talking about chores. This is a question that comes up a lot, both with private clients and also in my membership and in our Facebook group. At the time of this recording, my 20-year-old has moved out of the house and my 14 and 17-year-old are still at home. And I'll give you a little list in no particular order of the chores that they do. They do the dishwasher, empty the dishwasher, they put away the clean dishes. I have to say I mostly wash the dishes, although they do occasionally. They pick up the grocery order, they put away the groceries when they bring it home, they clean the bathroom, they vacuum. They are in charge of taking out the garbage, the compost, and the recycling. They sort and fold the laundry. Again, my control enthusiasm, I'm the one who generally does the laundry unless they need something of their own done, and then they do it. They walk the dog, they mow the lawn, they do yard raking, leaf raking, and different like seasonal house maintenance, such as window washing. Every year we sort of power wash the outside of our house. My sons typically help with that. And my older son, who's the only one of the three who has his driver's license, when he lived at home, he was in charge of getting the snow tires taken off and on and getting the oil changed and getting gas when we needed it. So it's a pretty extensive list. I feel super lucky that they all are happy to chip in. And I will say they are pretty happy to chip in. I don't get complaints about this stuff. And I think they feel good about helping out. And let's see, what did they do when they were little? Not much. They really didn't do that much when they were little. And, as they got older, their responsibilities increased. But so how did we get there? Or how did we get here, rather? We'll talk about that, but just a couple of general notes before we dive in. I don't suggest tying chores to money or allowance. We talked about that a lot in episode 11 of the podcast with Chelsea Brennan. This is the thing. If you tie chores to money, first of all, what happens when they feel like they have enough money? You say, oh, okay, you're going to get $1 every time you empty the dishwasher. Oh, sorry, I have enough money. I don't want to do that. And also, one of the big ideas we're going to be talking about today is that everybody helps out because they're part of the family. You and your partner don't get paid for doing all the work that you do in the family. And why should the kids get paid for doing the work that they do in the family? We all help out and we all pitch in. That's our big idea here today because we're part of a family team. And paying somebody to do the things that the family team members should do goes against that spirit. I'm not against paying kids to do things that are above and beyond their normal household duties. So, for example, if you have some special job to do and, it's not something that they normally do and they're looking to earn some money, fine, go ahead and pay them for that job. If you're listening to this and you have little kids, you're really ahead of the game because what I'm going to say next is great. If you have older kids, it's a little bit too late for you. But if you have little kids, take advantage of them wanting to do everything with you and help you with everything. I know that it's hard when you're trying to, get the dishes done and you have a toddler who wants to help, or you're trying to put in the laundry and they want to help because they're not very helpful at that age, right? They're more of a hindrance than they are helpful. The thing is, though, if we don't let them help when they want to help, they will lose interest in helping us, and it'll be much harder as they get older when we want them to help and they don't want to help anymore. So really try to, if you have little kids, try to let them help you as much as possible, even if it slows you down, is we really want to never have them lose that desire to help us. So that's just a quick tip for those of you who have littler kids. So I already mentioned one of our big ideas here with kids and chores is that they help out because they're part of the family team. And, sometimes if my kids complain, which they do occasionally, but I say, we're all part of a team here and I'm working hard and dad's working hard and we need you to pitch in and help out. That's really our big idea, is that they're part of a family team. And you might find that if your child doesn't care about being part of the family team, I would say work on connection. Maybe your connection's a little bit low. Maybe they're feeling disconnected and they're not feeling like part of the family team. So, use some of our peaceful parenting strategies to work on connection. I will put some of those strategies in the show notes. But if your child doesn't care about being part of the family team, that's sort of a bit of a red flag that connection might be low in your family or that things might be feeling strained or tense. So just make a mental note and, do what you can to improve the overall tone of your household and the temperature and increase connection so that they do care about wanting to be part of the family team. Which brings me to my other big idea, which is that it should feel good to help. So mastery is when you're proud of a job well done and you feel good about yourself. And pro-social behavior is what sociologists call it, when you want to help out or you want to share, you want to be kind. We do that because it makes us feel good. So we want our kids to feel good about helping out. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by making it fun. And yeah, maybe if you have an older child, fun might not be exactly the right word to use, but you can always make it a connection time, put on some music and do chores side by side with each other and use it as a time to connect. Or if you do have younger kids, put some music on and have a dance party while you're tidying up the toy room. Or, make a contest of who can get the most stuffies in the basket and from the furthest away. Or make it a race. But if you can find some way to make chores fun, maybe the family cleans up the kitchen after dinner together and we put on some music. I'm sensing a theme here with music and fun, but we put some music on and we all clean up the kitchen together after dinner. That's really, really important to make something enjoyable, even if it's a chore. And the other thing about making it feel good and that mastery piece is that we want kids to be able to take pleasure in their accomplishments. So we don't want to praise them because praise is an external judgment, right? What we think of them, but we want them to feel good about themselves. That's part of mastery, that taking pleasure in a job well done. So maybe they help you tidy up the living room and then you stand back and you say, "Oh my goodness, look at this living room. Look how nice it looks. Look at what a good job we did. It looks so tidy now. It's so beautiful in here." If you did it together, or if, they did it by themselves, you can say something like, "Wow, it looks amazing. It's so tidy in here. I can't believe it. High five," that kind of thing. So really drawing their attention to the results of their labors and inviting them to take pride in themselves in this job well done. And that's really, really going to take you far in them internalizing this desire to want to help. Oh, helping makes me feel good. When I pitch in, it makes me feel good. When I'm part of the family team, it makes me feel good. So if we're thanking them for helping us, if we are noticing a job well done and appreciating them, that's really going to build that intrinsic motivation. And that's what's going to make helpful and responsible character traits in them, right? That's becomes part of who they are. Okay, so we've talked about building that intrinsic motivation to be part of the family team by encouraging them to become part of the family team and also by making helping feel good. Let's talk about a few details. Sometimes parents decide okay, their job is going to be setting the table, or their job is going to be feeding the dog or emptying the dishwasher or whatever it is. I think it's, especially if you have a strong-willed kid, I think it's important to remember that we want to give them choices. So maybe you brainstorm a whole bunch of jobs that your kids could do, including the ones I mentioned and, taking out the garbage, whatever. And you ask them, or maybe you brainstorm together. Now that I'm thinking about it, brainstorm together what jobs the family needs to have happen. And you ask them, what would you like your job to be? And, depending on how organized you are, you could have a job for the week, or maybe just more casually on a daily basis. You say to your child, I could use some help setting the table, or I could use some help, taking out the garbage. Do you think you could do one of those things? Which one would you like to do? And the point here is that we want kids to have choices. We want them to feel empowered. Nobody likes being bossed around. So asking them, how could you help the family? Or what are the things that we do every day? And what are some of the things that you might be able to help out with? I think that's really important for people to feel like they have choices and they're not just being forced or bossed. I also want us to remember that depending on how old your child is, they're still learning. So they might not do things as well as we would like them to do, but we want to try and still be positive about their contribution or their, the job that they do. And maybe in a positive way, we can, either fix it ourselves or we can bring them back and help them fix it. Hey, I think you missed a spot here, or you didn't quite get all the dishes. Like, let's finish this up. But I think overall, we want to make sure that we are keeping everything on a positive tone and keeping it light and, trying to be playful if we do have to correct them. And also because they're still growing and learning, sometimes they need some scaffolding from us. If you know me, you hear me talk a lot about scaffolding. Scaffolding is the support that we put in place to help our child meet our expectations. So, sometimes tasks can feel overwhelming. Say it's, Saturday morning and everybody cleans their room on Saturday morning, but your child's room is a mess and they are just lying on the floor and I don't want to clean my room. Maybe they need some scaffolding. Maybe they need you to help them break it down a little bit. Okay, sweet pea, first of all, gather up all your, dirty clothes and put them in the hamper and then come and get me when you've done that. And then, okay, pick up all the books and, put them on the shelves. And okay, what should we do next? So helping them break down a task. And maybe even they need more scaffolding than that. Maybe they need a little help. Maybe they need you to keep them company. Whatever support our kids need to complete this job and complete this chore and feel good about it in the end, and have it not be a power struggle or a terrible experience. That's what's helping them feel good about the job that they've done and, become those helpful people that we want them to be when it feels good to be doing this work and doing these chores and jobs. That example of cleaning the room, that actually brings me to another point that I wanted to make with you all, which is that we need to have age-appropriate expectations for our kids, or maybe even developmentally appropriate expectations. That, leaving a 6-year-old to clean up a really messy room by themselves might be too high of an expectation. And sometimes even, something they can do one day, they can't do another day because their resources are low. So really trying to check in with your child and be realistic about what you think they can accomplish. And generally, we think of small jobs for small people and bigger jobs for bigger people. Another thing that I think is really helpful to think about is giving kids something to look forward to. So I know sometimes we as adults okay, I'm going to do the dishes and then I'll watch my favorite show or whatever. This is really helpful I know this was helpful for my kids and it's helpful for a lot of the families that I work with. Let's all clean up the toy room and then we'll go play outside. Or as soon as, we get the table cleared, we'll go and read 5 stories. So really trying to set up a when-then expectation of when we've got this job done, then we will do this thing. It's really helpful for children and for us to have something to look forward to. We do the hard thing and then we do the fun thing. So that's really great to put in place too. Let's get this thing done all together. We're still keeping our positive attitude. We're still talking about helping the family team, and then we'll do this other thing. They'll do this other fun thing afterwards. Now, I said that my kids generally don't complain about doing chores, and that is 100% true. It doesn't mean that people come home from school and notice the clean dishes on the counter that need to put away and just do it. No, we still have a lot of reminding going on. And I like to think of it as reminding rather than nagging. They will need reminding. It's not their agenda, right? They're not thinking oh, I've got to get the kitchen cleaned up before I start making dinner. No, generally not. So they do need reminding. They do need invitations. And sometimes, I'll ask my daughter, can you empty the dishwasher? And she'll say yes. And I'll say, can you do it by X time? Can you do it by 5:30 because I'm going to be making dinner? And, maybe 5:15, I'll notice she hasn't done it yet. And I'll say, hey, remember, you got to do the dishwasher. And she's like, oh, yeah, okay. And she goes and does it. So nagging makes us feel bad. Nagging makes them feel bad. But if we go into this with the expectation, I want to say that again, the expectation that there will be reminders necessary, I think that can really help us stay out of a negative mindset. So be friendly about it. As we say, get in their face in a friendly way. Hey, I noticed those dishes are still down there waiting to be put away. Can you run down and do it, please? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I've been known to do the over the top, oh, thank you so much, before they've even done it. And that gets a giggle. So go into this with the expectation that they will need reminding. Try and be pleasant about it. Try to get in their face in a friendly way. And know that that's normal because their agenda is not our agenda. So we do try to keep our sense of humor about it and get in their face in a friendly way. your child's going to learn eventually that there's no getting out of it. You're not going to give up and do it yourself, right? And the heels of that, this parenting is an art, right? It's not a science, because although I don't want you to give up and do it yourself, I also want you to avoid power struggles. We're trying to keep this a positive experience, that helping out idea, right? So if your child's really tired or having a hard time, try not to be rigid and dig your heels in. If they need help, help them out. Once in a while, it's okay to give them a pass. Like if you were exhausted and you'd had a long day, would you want your partner to insist that really it's your turn to do the dishes and that they're not going to do it? So let's try to be sort of like human caring here when we are dealing with our child in chores. Like we want to find this balance between, I expect you to do it because you're part of the family team and we all help each other out. And also we're part of a family team and we all help each other out and I'm going to help you today. So if that makes sense to you, I hope that makes sense to you, because it makes a lot of sense to me. Like we're building team mentality here. We help each other out when we need help. Just a little side note, sometimes the parents that I work with get frustrated because they don't feel like their child sees everything that they do and that their child doesn't appreciate all of the hard work that the parents, put in for the child, and that the child, rolls their eyes or complains when they're asked to do something. It's not really age appropriate for your child to appreciate you. Let me say that again. It's not age appropriate for your child to appreciate you until they get much older, like the teen years. If your 5-year-old appreciated dinner on the table every night, it would probably mean that they were coming from a very difficult place and they know suffering, right? So if you're finding yourself resentful about not feeling appreciated by your child and appreciated for all that you do when you ask them to do something, that's a little bit of an imbalance that I see. That's a little bit sort of out of balance. Your child isn't supposed to feel grateful for all that you do, because that's just not the way your hierarchy works. You're there as the caretaker. They're the ones to be cared for. So if you are feeling resentful, you might give yourself a little bit of appreciation. I often find when we're feeling resentful, it's because we haven't been doing a good enough job of meeting our own needs. And I'm talking about more than chores or dinner here, but are there ways in which we're expecting other people to notice what we need? And maybe even part of that is expecting our child to notice what we do and appreciate us for it. So that's just like a little side note of something that comes up often when we're talking about household things and children. If you are doing all the things that I've recommended to you in this podcast, making it fun, providing the scaffolding that they need, not expecting perfection, giving choices, encouraging them to feel good about being part of the family team, doing it together, I would do what we call asking for help to solve the problem. I would say something like, kids, we decided that every night we're going to spend 10 minutes tidying up the living room. That's actually something that we did when my kids were little. We called it the 10-minute tidy. And we would put on a timer and everyone would kind of run around and just tidy up for 10 minutes. So you might say something like, we decided that it was going to work really well for us to do the 10-minute tidy every night. And I've noticed that when it's time for the 10-minute tidy, everyone's dragging their feet and complaining and no one's really doing it. And that feels like a problem to me, because then, I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to get upset that nobody's helping. And I also don't want to go to bed with a mess and wake up the next morning with a giant mess to start the day. So does anyone have an idea for how we can solve this problem? And then take ideas and write them down. There's a lovely blog post written by someone else that I will link to in the show notes. And she did this with her kids when they were little. And it was about that she kept finding messes all over the place. People weren't cleaning up their own messes. So she gathered her kids together and she said, basically what I said. And one of her kids said, I know whenever you see a mess, you can say, rub-a-dub-dub, I see a mess, and whoever mess it is will come and clean it up. And of course she thought that was ridiculous, that would never work. But because the kids suggested it and they all agreed that that was what would work for them, she agreed to try it. And lo and behold, it worked. And throughout her children's childhood, she said, rub-a-dub-dub, I see a mess, and somebody would come and clean it up. And first of all, don't think you can try that and it would work for you. This worked for them because it came from her family, right? Her kids thought of that. They had buy-in and this is what they suggested. And because they suggested it, it worked. So ask for help to solve the problem and take seriously whatever your kids say, you can try it. If it doesn't work, you can have another little meeting like, hey, we tried your idea. It wasn't working. What else can we do to solve this problem? So that's a great thing to do if you're finding that you're trying all the suggestions that I've said to you and it's still feeling a little bit difficult to get anyone to help out. And, the other thing I want to say is little kids are honestly not that helpful. Like, they can be a little bit helpful, but a 6-year-old can't truly pitch in and take things off your plate the same way a 16-year-old can. So we just want to remember that we're sort of thinking long term here. We don't want to get into power struggles where we're trying to force the 6-year-old to take their plate from the table and put it in the dishwasher every night if it kills us. Because honestly, can we just take the plate and put it in the dishwasher? We want to think more in terms of, finding these moments of helping, finding these moments of joyful working together that is going to build that intrinsic motivation rather than trying to be structured about it and sort of rigid and hardlined about it. Making your 6-year-old put their plate in the dishwasher every night, well, I think making them do it under duress is what I mean, will do more harm than good in the long run because A, it doesn't really help you that much, and B, it's setting up a lot of conflict between you. And so B, have a light touch with this, parents. Have a light touch. Think long term. You're really planting the seeds with your younger children for them actually becoming real helpers when they're 16. And trust me, it is really, really honestly helpful when your kids can do all the things that my kids mentioned. And when they were little, they really didn't do very much. We did the 10-minute tidy. They helped tidy up their rooms. They, helped me with things around the house, but they didn't have chores that they did. It was more just everyone's on the family team. So try not to be rigid about it and think that we've got to instill these habits. It's more like you're building the spirit of the family helping, which is what's going to turn them into true helpers. One of my absolutely favorite parenting articles, I wish I had written it, is called Model Graciousness. And she talks about how we want to be the people that we want our children to become. And that we have to have faith that by being those people who are helpful, kind, and generous, we're modeling that behavior for our children. And that's sort of what I'm talking about here. This is the spirit that we want to develop in our family of helpfulness and feeling good about being part of the family team. This is also what's going to give your children the sense of belonging, right? The sense of belonging and the sense of being part of something bigger than they are and feeling important. And this is going to have carryover into more than just chores, right? This is part of that caring what you think that is so important as kids get older so that we can influence them. So it's that give and take. A couple questions I get asked that I'll just close with here. Is it important that kids have a regular job? If that works for your family, I think I kind of hinted at this before. If that works for your family, great. But what I found was sometimes kids weren't home when I needed something done. And then I got, well, it's his job. I'm not going to take out the garbage. That's not my job. So we had some jobs that were more designated that weren't time sensitive. And then we also had jobs that just whoever I asked, whoever was home had to do it. And what we ended up doing, especially during COVID, was I would write a list of things to do because everyone was home, right? During COVID, I would write a list of things for them to do. And this is what we occasionally still do on the weekends. And they would divide it up themselves. So no, you don't have to have a regular job. You can if you want to, but that's not what's important here. It's just people pitching in and feeling good, being part of the family team if you haven't gotten that already. So another question I get is, what if they refuse? As I mentioned, if you have young children, it's really mostly, if you do it mostly yourself, that's okay. If your kids are older, I would try these two things. I talked about this in the beginning of the podcast, but that defiance of I won't do it or I won't care, I don't care, that's a relationship problem. If you have a close connected relationship with your 10 or 11-year-old or however old, and they will want to do things because you're important to them, even if they don't want to do the thing. They might roll their eyes, they might huff. And, by the way, ignore the attitude. If your kid is doing it and they're complaining while they do it, or they're, rolling their eyes or huffing and puffing, even if they're like slamming things around, as long as they're not going to break anything, just ignore it. Ignore the attitude. They are doing it, and that's what's important. And you might even do what I do sometimes when I would get the complaining. I would just turn on the extra sweet of like, thank you so much for doing that. And then they would usually get a giggle. Anyhow, if you are finding that defiance, really just take a step back from the chores, work on your relationship. The kids who feel connected will help you out because they want to help you, even if they don't want to do the thing. The other thing I might do if they're refusing is talking about the sort of repercussions. I'm not talking about punishment because, we really try and we don't believe in punishment in peaceful parenting, but we talk about what are the natural consequences of the job not getting done. Sometimes I get complaints about, I don't want to walk the dog, it's raining. Like, well, okay, even if it's raining, she still needs exercise. Like, the dog will suffer if you don't walk her. Or, the kitchen's a mess if you don't empty the dishwasher and put them away, the clean dishes away. I don't have anywhere to put the dirty stuff, and then I don't have any room to make dinner. So really trying to help them see why that's so important, what those repercussions are, what those consequences are of not cleaning up. When my kids were little, I'd say, if we don't clean up our toys, they're going to get lost, they're going to get broken, they'll get stepped on. That's a real consequence of something that will happen if we don't clean up our things and we don't take care of our things. And so just really, you want to talk about why these things are important. This is especially good for strong-willed kids. When strong-willed kids understand the why behind something, they're so much more likely to want to cooperate. I hope that was helpful. And, I really think this does work. It is a long game. So don't feel that you have to put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure your 6-year-old has chores to do every day. Let's think long term. I'll just share a cute story. My 17-year-old, twice in the past week, I've had neighbors come up to me who told me that he saw them carrying heavy packages. And we live in a really small community, and it can be a walk from access points to our community. And he saw older neighbors carrying heavy packages, and twice this week, he went up to them and insisted on carrying their packages to their house or their groceries or whatever it was. 2 different times this week. And I just thought that was really lovely and sweet. And he sees himself as a helpful person, and that's extended not only from our family, but out into our community. He sees himself as a helpful person, and I think it probably made him feel good. He didn't even mention it to me. I heard it from the neighbors, which obviously made me feel good. So this is a long game. Remember about modeling graciousness and making it fun and really emphasizing being part of that family team while you encourage your child to feel good about a job well done. Thanks for joining me today. I would love to hear if these tips work for you. And your experience with what you've learned on the podcast today. You can join us over at my free Facebook group, Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet. It is a lovely group of other like-minded parents on this journey to be more peaceful. And it's a wonderful little corner of the internet. It's safe and supportive and non-judgmental. Join us at Facebook, Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet. And also, I would just love to ask a quick favor of you. If you would just take a minute and share this episode right now with a friend or two who you think would appreciate it and would like to learn about the podcast, that is the best way that you can support me and you can support our podcast, is by helping us spread the word and reach more people so we can make an even bigger impact in changing the world one family at a time. And I would also love it if you could follow this podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I would love it if you could rate and review it. I'd love a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. That also really helps us reach more people and impact the world in a positive way when more people feel supported and know about peaceful parenting. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.